Autism O Gaming. You might want to change that name. I'm just saying, so people might find that offensive. Even if you actually are autistic, that could be seen as offensive. I'm just throwing that out there. And by the way, I'm gonna say this outright. There's absolutely nothing wrong with people who are autistic. I know many people who are autistic. All right, and they're perfectly normal, fine, good, positive people. There's nothing wrong with this at all. Viking asks if I'm autistic. Of course, you didn't know? You can't tell?
Did you want to talk about oppositional defiance disorder in ASD?
Yes, specifically because I believe Phil also exhibits oppositional defiance disorder constantly for his entire life, so absolutely. Oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD, is a behavioral disorder characterized by a persistent pattern of uncooperative, defiant, and hostile behaviors toward authority figures. These behaviors, often manifested as arguing, refusing to comply, and deliberate attempts to annoy others, can significantly impact a child's daily functioning. ODD is typically diagnosed in childhood and can persist into adolescence and adulthood. If you want an example of ODD, think King Cobra JFS.
Stupid fucking liar. Fuck you! Stupid fucking liar. Hey liar. Fuck you. Oh, you don't like being beat up? You don't like it? You don't like it? You don't fucking like it? Then maybe you shouldn't fucking go against the grain.
Back to the conversation.
So how does that relate? How does oppositional defiance disorder relate to autism, Anna?
So there are kind of two ways to look at it. Like, first of all the sort of neurodevelopmental condition, it's quite rare for them to exist in isolation. You know, when you kind of take a neurodivergent person, it's statistically much more likely that they will have autism and ADHD, autism and dyspraxia, you know, ADHD and oppositional defiance disorder. So we have this long list of different neurodevelopmental conditions, and they often coexist. So, you know, that's one thing. You know, statistically, it will be likely, you know, to have people who have both autism and oppositional defiance disorder.
Okay.
The other kind of way of looking at it, there is a specific, let's say, subtype of autism when people have particular challenges around external demands. It's called pathological demand avoidance.
Okay.
You know, it's maybe not a nice way to describe it, call it in pathological, but, you know, that's strictly speaking the name. And, you know, basically people who have this difficulty with demands, this pathological demand avoidance, they will go to extreme lengths to avoid the demand. And that can lead to a lot of challenging behaviors. And that's where there will be an overlap between what you see in oppositional defiance disorder versus what you see in the pathological demand avoidance. So you would really need to drill into, you know, what is the purpose of the challenging behavior that you're observing? You know, is it, you know, because the person is not comfortable with authority and they want to kind of, you know, exert their power and sort of, you know, be defiant? Or is it more that they are really uncomfortable with the demand that is being put on them and they will go to any length to avoid that demand? The demand often comes from people who are in positions of authority in one shape or form because, you know, those are the people who can make demands. So it can be a little bit, you know, kind of challenging to really drill into it and make a decision, you know, which one is it?
Can it be a comfort issue? Because that's what I see a lot in Phil. Even the most innocuous demands that his audience may make of him, or just other people around him, he'll just say, no, we're not, I'm not doing that, despite it being a very simple demand and would benefit him. Would you say that it does come back to comfort?
It doesn't matter if it benefits you.
Okay.
The problem is it's an external demand. Probably my husband would laugh at that because I have a bit of an issue of it. And, you know, the automatic response to any question and anything he asks me to do is no. And it's almost, I don't even process it.
Okay.
You know, I sort of hear it coming and it's coming at me as an external demand. I don't in that moment evaluate, you know, is that a reasonable request? Is it going to be of mutual benefit? Is it even just going to be for my benefit? Oh no, an external demand has just landed. So I need
Okay.
to kind of, avoid it, and I'm going to say no. So now he sort of, often waits a little bit, and, after that automatic no, my higher brain function will hopefully kick in, and I will, process it all a little bit more and be like, okay, actually what is being proposed here is very reasonable.
That's
I shall
very
go
interesting.
ahead with it.
That's
But yeah, it's that very primitive brain and that sense of danger that demand has hit. Gotta defend. And the easiest way to defend is just to say, no, I'm not doing it.
okay. Interesting. So it's as though it bypasses the cognitive process, and it's just a no. It's just an automatic no. Then, if I'm understanding,
It's just how quick it comes out. So I don't know if it's the same for Phil.
Okay.
But that's for me, it's
Interesting.
just the no just comes from my mouth before I even have a chance to think it through.
and
He's nodding now.
I'm a layman. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just an asshole on the internet when it comes down to it. But I see that in Phil, because he will immediately, in less than a second, just say, no, we're not doing that.
A $2 tip. Someone wants me to say a phrase with a specific name in it, but I don't want to say it because I don't know who the person is, and it might be insulting or it might be something toxic, and I'm not going to do it. No, I don't just want to say stuff out loud and then end up like insulting someone. No, see, this is where I don't want to do anything like this yet, because now I'm being asked, hey, Phil, would you consider counting contributions from Kick during your YouTube stream? And no. Can we stop? Let's everyone stop right now, all right? Because already this is getting ridiculous. When I'm streaming on Kick, contributions will be for the Kick stream. When I'm streaming on YouTube, contributions will be for YouTube. If I'm streaming on both with a co-stream, then we'll count everything. I'm not going to be, oh, well, Phil, weren't you aware that over on your Kick stream, someone contributed something, so you should be counting it for your YouTube stream? And Phil, you're on Kick, but someone just did a super chat on YouTube. You should count. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. I'm sorry. We're just not doing that. It's going to be too messy, too complicated, and I'm not going to be monitoring 17 stuff at once. If I'm restreaming and I have one central place to monitor everything, that's a different story, right? But I'm definitely not going to be doing that. That's ridiculous. I can't even look at my Kick stream. I'll be playing a game.
Then I guess hindsight's 50-50, because as we know now, at the time of this video, he counts everything everywhere. Back to the conversation. And he won't give any sort of rational explanation. He'll just say, no, we won't do that. Then he'll wait a few seconds, and then he'll say, well, we can't do that because of the schedule, because of 5 other things. And then a few months later, he'll do it. He'll go and he'll do the thing after he's thought about it for months. We've seen this a million times with direct capture.
I never thought about that before.
Right.
That's mind-blowing.
Right. We've seen this. We've seen a million examples of it. He'll say no, and then eventually he'll come around and he'll do the thing months, sometimes years later. So I don't even really think there's any sort of expectation to when someone will come around. Anna, it sounds like you go through that process very relatively quickly, but Phil, I think he'll just sit with something, and then 2 years later he'll decide to do it. It's very strange.
Of procrastination and autism and a kind of general executive dysfunction, and procrastination is one example of that. Just how long is it going to take you to kind of decide on doing something, first of all, thinking how you're gonna do it, and then actually turning those thoughts into action.
Okay.
It is a very, very common problem, amongst autistic people to struggle with that. Again, they're having very tight schedules and routines really helps with that, because it removes a lot of the cognitive load. Like for example, I wear pretty much the same clothes every day because that makes my morning easier, because I don't have to make the decision. What am I gonna wear?
Of course.
They're not the same clothes, Logan. They're the same style of clothes.
Okay. Yeah.
He's not wearing the same crusty clothes 7 days a week.
Thank you for clarifying
Thank you
that.
for clarification.
I assumed that, but it's the internet, so you have to be very specific. But yeah,
it just removed that cognitive load of making a decision. Food is another thing. Kind of sticking to eating pretty much the same things. It's very common in autism because you don't have to make a choice. you just kind of eat the same thing. So when you get a hunger signal, you just eat the same thing.
Can I just jump in?
Of course.
Remember last night or the night before when Phil was looking at the English food and he was talking about bangers and mash in disgust?
Right.
Yeah, they got the bangers and mash. 2 Irish sausages served on a bed of mashed potatoes and gravy topped with caramelized onions. That looks so weird. Oh, no. Dude, that looks so weird. Bangers and mash looks really bizarre, man. Oh, it looks like they're like shriveled, ugh.
That's an example. Like, I can't envisage him eating bangers and mash a lot. I've never seen him eat bangers and mash. So, that's one example of his immediate disgust at new food. And you could see that with the snack boxes that he got. Some of the Japanese snacks, immediate disgust as soon as he picked them out of the box.
Yeah, it's
And
like
also-
he'll judge something before he even really touches it or tastes it or
Yes.
smells it, just because he says, this doesn't look right to me, I don't want it.
Yes, pretty much. I want to loop back eating on stream.
Yes.
You think about his viewers being exactly like Philip and eating on stream. My wife told me something last week that blew my mind. I just wanted to blow your mind as well.
So this kind of watching people eating, it's a common thing in an autistic community, and it kind of has different functions for different people. One of the functions is the sensory element. Like people actually enjoy it's kind of the sounds and the looking at the food and the whole kind of experience of it. So it's a popular content. The other part of it is many autistic people don't feel very hungry. There is that problem with technical term for it is interoception. So being able to appreciate the signals coming from your own body,
right,
and kind of recognize, when you are feeling tired, when you are feeling hungry. When you are never feeling hungry, eating becomes difficult. Like usually we do recognize that you need to eat to survive. So we will have different strategies to sort of boost the appetite. If it's time for eating, but I'm not feeling hungry, I haven't eaten, the whole day. How am I gonna make that eating process easier? And watching a video of somebody eating sort of stimulates that hunger and appetite in some autistic people. So that would be another reason, for them to seek out those videos of, people eating. And, if you have your streamer that you enjoy watching anyway, doing videos of eating, that is perfect because it's a familiar content that you're already enjoying. And he is doing something that you actually need to be kind of require, a video of somebody eating, like absolutely perfect.
Right. Well, I know of at least one person that has commented to him in chat and has sort of bugged him and said, when are we eating the pizza? I want to order pizza so I can eat with you.
Could I have my feast at lunch so in Europe people can attempt to eat with me? I mean, I eat early. I eat relatively early for Americans. Usually Americans eat dinner around between like 7 to 9 p.m. I eat my dinner between 4 and 5 p.m. So I eat way earlier than most people. If you actually do the math, I guess it's a 7-hour time difference between that and like Europe. So you would be able to eat, I guess you'd have to just have a late dinner if you wanted to eat with me or whatever. But I don't, no, I'm not going to be eating like super early. I'm not eating pizza today. Someone says they got pizza to eat with me today. I'm not eating pizza today. We're going to do it tomorrow.
And I feel like that particular person probably either was probably LARPing, or maybe just has autism. Because I believe people find him very comforting, especially if you're neurodivergent or on the spectrum in some way. So I think what we're kind of getting to with this conversation is he is cultivating a neurodivergent audience, which is something we've always talked about, but I think he is, whether he knows it or not, targeting a very specific kind of viewer.
Can I chime in again?
Of course.
I'm going to say something that's going to be controversial.
Okay.
I believe that there is an element of neurodivergency in the detractor community.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that's controversial at all.
I think some people would probably get offended if you told them that they were neurodivergent. And I think the LARPing, especially in the kick chat, sort of muddies the waters in some ways. It's not a natural. See, I like natural Phil. Natural Phil. I don't like it when people are baiting him. When people are creating situations. I like natural Phil, and I think a lot of damage has been done in the past and is being done in regards to LARPing, especially in the kick chat. The kick chat is, I'm convinced, 98% LARPers.
Oh, absolutely.
With 2% genuine fans, and I really do think it muddies the waters, and it sometimes makes it very difficult for me to sort of string together these videos when it's an unnatural fermentation, when things are being forced. I'd just like to add that into the conversation. I think LARPing as a whole is very damaging. But I can understand why people do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think LARPing can be fun, but in terms of looking at Phil and having to sit through his streams, I think it wastes a lot of time because it derails him, it distracts him, it gets him even further away from the point than he already was, which can be funny at times, but if you're coming from your perspective as someone who likes to watch Phil and look at his neurodivergence, it really, really hinders that, because a lot of times you just want to sort of watch the content and take it in, but the LARPers are poking him in a way that's kind of altering the study if you look at it as a study. You know what I mean?
You can even add on to that. Phil doesn't show a functional understanding of what's going on in the kick chat.
Right.
You look at some of the names of some of the people that haven't been banned and have been in there for months getting free gifted memberships off the genuine fans. You know, any sort of neurotypical person would be thinking, that's a detractor name. I need to get rid of that person. They're not in here for my benefit, they're in here for their benefit. And it's not just one name. It's not just five names. Of them. It's literally most of kick chat that hasn't been banned yet, and they've been there for months. And the fact that Phil doesn't get that tells me that his understanding of the social cues and his own thoughts and feelings, like alexithymia and mind blindness, it just shows me there is a major deficit there. There was a
LARPer in YouTube chat. I don't know if he's still in there, but you can see him in a lot of detractor chats as well. But there was a LARPer in YouTube chat for years called Now Guys, and that's a very obvious one that he just kind of ignored.
Yes, and Phil doesn't get it.
Yeah.
He doesn't get it. He's never shown any inkling that he gets it. If you can show me one moment in time where he's purposely gone out of his way to call out somebody's name that's been a regular person in the chat for months,
right,
and he's shown insight into that person having a detractor name, I will eat my hat.
Like he calls out a guy called Dunsfelter.
Thank you for taking care of that moron, Dunsfelter. Appreciate that.
Dunsfelter is obviously a detractor name. What are you doing?
He doesn't understand the nuance.
Yes.
It's sort of like a lot of neurodivergent people within autism do not get humour. And I think sometimes humour is quite a frightening concept.
So I'm listening to this conversation, and I think I kind of have two things to add.
Sure.
One is, that kind of being naive and not really picking up on all those kind of social cues and, taking things at face value, which this is like a massive thing of, kind of general autistic communication style. And how we are. You just say what you think. There's no reading between the lines. If you dislike somebody, you are gonna tell them. If you like them, you are gonna tell them. Things are not necessarily subtle. The ability to read between the line, that is a very high level of kind of communication and cognitive skill that most autistic people don't have. So you kind of think in black and white, and you just, take it as it's given. Not all this kind of sarcasm and nuance and things that may be going behind, a message, something is being said, but the meaning is actually something very different. So, that's one part of it. The other part of it is, like Phil is creating content. What people are gonna do with that content, does it matter? If the detractors are getting, entertainment and, some of their needs are being met by this content, why does it matter? I'm sorry, but some needs of the detractors must be met by watching those videos, because you guys seem to be spending an awful lot of time, watching and analyzing and talking about this content.
Yes, I would say that this practice in and of itself can be considered autistic in a lot of ways.
It meets many kind of facets of a special interest. So, like no criticism of anybody, but, I think that needs to be put out there. And it will be the same, with the autistic audience.
Yes.
Why is it the problem that you guys are there in the chat and having a good time in your own way?
Right.
We are not necessarily possessive, of each other, those kind of transactional friendships. It's free for all, you can be friends with many people, you can, share those relationships. So, why not share Phil with, this large body of detractors who he seems to be enjoying, watching the videos so much for their own reasons.
And to be fair, sorry, Logan.
Sure.
I just want to make this point very quickly. To be fair, Kino Casino half-heartedly tried to get the detractors on board by starting the wrestling show.
They did?
Now, I'm not sure how accurate that's going to be considering what's gone down this week. I know PPP might change his story a little bit or whatever. It's neither here nor there. But the fact that they tried that to get to monetize the detractors in not a positive way, but in a way that we could partake in the content as well, just goes to speak to that fact. But obviously the wheels have fallen off as they always do when Phil has to liaise with people.
Yep.
Because he has no interpersonal skills whatsoever.
Exactly. And that's another thing we can talk about. He doesn't know how to network. He doesn't know how to maintain even a working relationship for content, because there's people I'm on varying terms with in the detractor community. Some people I talk to quite a bit, some people I collaborate with, and other people are more like, acquaintances. DSP, I don't think, makes any distinction between the differing levels of relationship or friendship you can have. And I think he has trouble understanding that Kino Casino were buddy trolls to him, because they were trolls to him. Like, they wanted to help him, but only in service of seeing what happened and making content out of him. And
it was just some light razzing.
Yes.
Started off as a bit of light razzing.
And now
there we go.
Gonna spit roast this
My mic was
mother
that piece of shit. No. What an ass.
He's a bum.
Dude, do you know how hard?
An ungrateful beggar bum.
Do you know how hard it was for me to hold it in? Every time he's in chat, hey, and I thought we were being obvious. Eh?
Yeah.
I thought we were being like as obvious as possible.
No, I mean we were like literally trying to get rid of him.
Fuck.
It's like when you like throw it. What's that scene where they throw the rocks at the dog at Old Yeller to make him go away?
Yes.
Or some shit like this. It's like, go. We don't want you here.
Bro.
You fucking son. It's outright insulting him to his face. Oh, he just couldn't get the memo. He just couldn't get the message.
And there's a big
that we didn't want anything to do with this boring fucking ass. But it was beyond how boring he was, how worthless he was.
Beyond that.
The lack of content, the lack of gratitude, how draining he was, how negative it was. It was that Phil's gay.
And it struck me very much what I used to see in the schoolyard or on the playground when bullies would kind of befriend an autistic child and kind of make them do things to laugh at them, which is exactly what they were doing with Phil. And PPP came out the last 2 nights and said as much. That's exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to build Phil up, but it was to serve in purpose of entertainment. So
it from an autistic perspective, where the communication is usually straightforward, people kind of think what they say. It can be really tricky to distinguish between somebody who genuinely wants to be your friend versus somebody who is very skilled at pretending to be your friend for some sort of nefarious hidden purposes that you really need to kind of, uncover. So I think that kind of becoming a victim of bullying, or we call it, mate crime even, when people are, in kind of taken advantage of in various ways under the guise, or that person is my friend. That is very, very common, unfortunately, when it comes to autistic people and those kind of interactions with the wider world.
Yes, because I find that they tend to take everything a friend, in quotes, tells them at face value. Which is...
Why would you lie to your friends? Unless
exactly.
you have a very good reason?
Exactly. It gets back to what we said, when we started the call, is that Phil, like a lot of people on the spectrum, would say, why would these people lie to me? They have no reason to, or if they did, they must have a good reason to. So,
but you can also flip that around and look at Phil and what PPP's now saying regarding some of the DMs and about Cat shouting at him.
Right.
So Phil's been oversharing this highly sensitive information to people who he believed were his friends. He can't mentally articulate and understand that they're there to build him up so that he provides content.
Right.
It worked! He won! Glorious victory! What a read. Guys, you all said he was retarded.
I didn't think this. Oh man, it was too good. Because the best part of it all is I wasn't gonna leak those DMs.
Well, because it's like, why?
That's why I played this whole game where I threatened him. I'm gonna do it. And I'm like going after him in the DMs. You've crossed the line now, Phil. And he did it.
He's so stupid. He's so stupid.
He did it to himself. All the blood is on his hands now.
Buddy, he faked cancer.
He faked cancer.
His wife having cancer.
That's his defense. Either she actually does have cancer, in which case he poured his heart out to a fucking 400-pound fat troll online. Please care about me. My wife's dying. Or more likely, he lied about cancer.
Phil's gone in 100% thinking they're his friends. He's given PPP and Andy dynamite in the DMs, which will get leaked. I'm 100% positive they're going to get leaked. And Phil's just sat there friendless, and he's given all this dynamite in the DMs.
And oversharing, it's such a common thing with autistic people. It's a big vulnerability. Because, we assume that other people are honest and everything is on face value. And also that difficulty distinguishing, who is just an acquaintance versus who is your real friend. So, who, you are going to talk about, really personal and intimate and sensitive stuff with versus like, oh, this is just an acquaintance. I kind of stick to, certain topics and not go into my really personal stuff. Making that distinction can be extremely hard. Within an autistic community, we often, share, pretty personal things, with each other. And that concept of oversharing, it's not necessary, it does not necessarily exist or it's causing danger, as long as, everybody is kind of open and honest and it's not gonna kind of misuse that information, the oversharing is not a problem. Everybody has an access to the same data. That's what we like. Everybody has exactly the same information. We're on the same page. Yes. Data has been shared, but that obviously can backfire if somebody is then gonna take your data to kind of do nefarious things with it.
I think if you jump in, the times it becomes a problem for Phil are when people go above what's legally acceptable and morally acceptable, like bank leaks.
Yeah, bank leaks, they're out there, but that was not an acceptable thing to do.
I agree with that, and the swatting as well. I don't think that's acceptable. So, like, when those things happen, it becomes a problem for Phil. But thinking about it and looking back to what I do, I've occasionally LARPed in his kick chat. I'm not going to deny that.
I did the same thing, yeah.
But I'm not doing anything. I wasn't giving him money. I wasn't overtly attacking him. I was joining in the LARP. So that's the extent of what I've done. I don't think that affects him.
Right. And most of what I do is I just comment on him, mostly just from a commentary or communication perspective, because I am fascinated by the way this man communicates, or his lack of communication, I should say. That's why I do a lot of the things that I do with him, because I think he's so odd in how he presents himself, how he carries himself. But as you say, if you look at him through the lens of autism, it all makes sense.
Yeah, I heard that sometimes people are wondering, is he like a narcissist or is it autism? Because people can see there's something odd about how he's interacting with others, and they're kind of looking at those different labels and, which one fits best. And that sort of links with that manipulation, for example. Manipulation would be a common kind of way of interacting that you would see in people who have a narcissistic personality disorder. To be a successful manipulator, you need to have a very good theory of mind and an excellent ability to shift perspective in order to know, what you need to do to influence the behavior of the other person and to get them to do what you want them to do, essentially. So be like a bit of a puppet master.
Right.
To be able to successfully manipulate other people, it's a skill. It requires quite a lot of, cognitive ability and, that kind of reading into other people, what makes them tick, which buttons to press. I really don't think Phil is that skilled. So, when we are kind of, he does something like brings, let's say his wife, and we are wondering, is that manipulation or is it just him oversharing? I would probably be leaning towards the oversharing, because I don't see any evidence from, the bits that I have seen of him having that level of kind of cognitive ability and interpersonal skills to be able to manipulate others, in that way, and to kind of use it as, this is how I'm gonna get sympathy, yes, this is the whole strategy, and kind of plan it through and execute it, kind of pretty quickly and effectively. It just does not seem like Phil to me, to be honest.
I think in a way it can be both, because I agree that he's not that smart. I'll be the first person to tell you he's not a master manipulator by any stretch, but I think on a long enough timeline, he's understood what words he needs to say and the things he needs to talk about in order to get money. I think that's why years and years and years ago, things like him bringing up his internet bill, his electric bill, his mortgage, and all of that, he knew those things worked. I don't think he quite understood why, but he knew they got him some money. So he did them.
If you would like to do me a favor and help out more, please tip me. I'm not saying you have to tip at all. I'm not saying that I'm expecting anything above and beyond what normally would happen on my normal streams, okay, or my normal content, nor am I asking for that. What I'm saying is, right now, I need funds to do things in the short term. And as much as I appreciate people who have been coming to the streams and supporting in various different ways, for example, I've noticed in the last week or two, there's been some people who've been gifting a lot of memberships, people who've been coming and doing super chats. That's all great, and that's going to help me in the long term, and I'm really appreciative of that. This is going to actually grow the channel, which is the point. So what I've been trying to do in the last year is grow DSP Gaming, rebrand it, try to get some constant growth on it, and this is all a big positive of that, all right? But short term, in this next week, I need help with tips, because that's funds I can use immediately to pay these bills and then afford to have a day off next week. All right? Now, excuse me. Undoubtedly, idiots will spin it in negative ways. I don't care what they say. They can go fuck themselves. They have nothing to do with anything here on my streams. All right? I am not trying to ask anyone for anything extra. What I'm saying is, if you were already going to support these streams over the weekend, please tip if you can. All right, because I need to get past these 2 big bills, and then afford my day off this week, and then we're in the clear. All right, so that's all I'm saying. Thank you in advance to anyone who does that. I will have to mention this every once in a while, because I know what'll happen is, undoubtedly, as the stream starts with gameplay and everything, you're going to see people jumping on who weren't here at this segment, and so it is what it is. Of course, again, this will be spun in a negative way, saying that, oh, he's talking about it all the time or whatever. I don't care. I don't care about any of these idiots or what they say. Please understand, you can just disregard everything that they've ever said. They're all worthless people. Okay.
And for a while, in this more recent time with Kino Casino, flippantly begging and sort of giving his viewers negative attention for not giving him money has worked. So he's still doing that. So I think he understands what works sometimes, but he doesn't understand why, if that makes sense.
That kind of monetary exchange is such a big part of both his routines and, what is important for him to get out of what he's doing.
Right.
He spends an awful lot of time on it. So, with a lot of kind of practice, this is going to be like a stronger skill. So I think I completely agree with you that he was able to work out, by that kind of repetition and a try and error, which sort of behavior it's going to link, to more, kind of monetary input.
Right.
But that does not necessarily mean that he's, particularly skilled in kind of like, what people are doing, why they are doing it, what sort of emotional response has led to them, giving me money. I think it's much more simplistic.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder whether he collects any data on, kind of what he's getting every day in terms of that kind of, money that it's coming in. And if there is, some sort of, I have shown this video, or I have done, particularly intense begging at this part of the schedule.
Right.
And that seems to be, increasing the kind of return at the end of the day, kind of getting the data in and figuring out, what is going to be your kind of next steps to achieve your goal. If it's his job, the purpose is to create the content to then get a monetary return. So it makes perfect sense to me. If you are going to be good at your job, you need to kind of, practice it, and so you need to perfect it in some shape or form and try to do more of what is working. And I guess that's a different with a hobby, because with a hobby, you may just experiment and just do, whether it works or it doesn't, you just kind of do. But if it's your job, then you will, you're supposed to do more of what's actually working, isn't it?
Yes. That being said, I don't think he uses hard data, quite honestly. I think he sort of just goes day by day. He has about a 1 to 2 day memory. Because he'll be talking about, this thing worked yesterday, or it worked earlier this week. Why isn't it working now? And then he sort of just moves on to the next thing. It may work for a few days, and then he'll do it again. So that may
link to why he's having so many money problems, and generally, having some input-output issues,
Right.
and ending up in debt, and that kind of lack of skill around that.
Have you spoken about the WWE Champions addiction?
Oh, we haven't covered that yet. We're just talking about the narcissism versus
you know what?
and manipulation.
But we're talking about him having a money problem, so I think we could get into it. This is a question that I would ask. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Go on.
This is a question that I would ask. Do you think people on the spectrum specifically are susceptible to certain, shall we say, dark patterns in things like mobile games, where if you give us this many coins, you'll get this rare thing? Would they be susceptible to those type of gambling behaviors?
Oh, Logan, you sweet summer child. Go on.
I think
Absolutely.
I already know the answer, but I'm asking the question for the content. Yes.
It's a massive issue, and it's almost it starts on biochemical level, and how kind of dopamine works on the brain, and how there are those kind of differences between neurodivergent brains. It will be both autism and ADHD that tends to be impacted by that.
Okay.
That's having those difficulties on biochemical level that make people more susceptible to addiction. I think where it comes, with autism, it's a repetition and routine. So, very quickly, you get into those patterns of, you are kind of opening the boxes and you are clicking on something and you are getting a reward. So you are kind of getting that dopamine boost.
Right.
And before you know it, that becomes part of your daily thing that you do, very kind of entrenched. It's self-reinforcing because, every time you open this loot box or, whatever it may be, you'll get some form of a dopamine hit. The problem with it is that the reinforcement varies between the boxes. So, sometimes you get a small reward, sometimes you get a very big reward.
Right.
The chances of getting a big reward are fairly small, but it happens often enough to still act as that reinforcer, to kind of get people stuck in the pattern. Because next time you click it, you may get, the bigger reward. But even if you don't get a bigger reward, you are still getting something. Like, note with the most of those mobile games, it's not like you're opening a box after box and there's absolutely nothing in them. There's always some form of reward. It's just sort of varies in size. Sometimes I do genuinely wonder whether the people who actually designed, this whole kind of model, have they thought about, okay, the neurodivergent people are massive online users. They are more kind of, online. There's an awful lot of them and they are kind of susceptible to it. So, let's kind of make that works. And, again, if you are trying to make money, you are going to set up something that works. This obviously works. I see this an awful lot in my work because, autistic people then get into a lot of trouble because they become, pretty much addicted. It's a form of gambling and they kind of lose all their money and they get into a lot of trouble and they get depressed and suicidal and they end up with a psychiatrist. So, that's a kind of extreme path where that can lead. But, I would say it's definitely a very, very common problem, unfortunately.
That was the fifth and final part of Analyzing Autism. Thank you everybody for watching. If you have not seen the other parts, links to the playlist are in the description. Also, most of all, huge shout outs and massive thanks to Anna and Who's Poppin'. I could not have done any of this without their insights. I am incredibly grateful for the opportunity. And I've already got ideas for another series. See you all in the next one, and thank you so much for watching.